Thank you very much, Tal-Or and Stav. Maya, you just reminded me that one of the things, and it's crazy to think about it, as we all know that the story of this war is Israel-related anti-Semitism. This is the kind of anti-Semitism that we're seeing the most. But one of the things that we've seen on October 7th, on the day itself, not October 8th, and not a couple of days later when the IDF operation started, is an inflation of far-right anti-Semitism online commanding the massacre, which was quite a shock for us, as we expected the kind of, Israel-related anti-Semitism. But this one was kind of less expected. So in any event, thank you very much. And we'll start with you, Tal-Or. So as I said before, since October 7th, we've seen a rise in anti-Semitism. Like 99% of Jewish communities have witnessed a rise in anti-Semitic incidents. And I'd like to ask you, what are you seeing online? What are the main themes that you're seeing? Give us a snapshot of what exists in the sphere.
Sure. So following October 7th, CyberWell tracked an 86% increase in the following 3 weeks following the October 7th attack, so nearly a doubling in online anti-Semitism, with a very clear trend to a shift in open hostility and calls to violence against both Jews and Israelis. We saw notably also some trends that were borrowing from the gaming world, actually calling on young Muslim men to come over the border into Israel, take up arms, and kill Jews. And that's something that we've seen continue to reverberate following this massive surge in online anti-Semitism, is a very clear call to violence and open hostility against Jews and Israelis, where it was once something that was couched in more classic anti-Semitism that was connected to wealth, control, and power. Now it's full out calling or justifying violence against Jews and Israelis. And I'll add that there's an added layer here of normalizing pro-terror content and pro-terror symbols in our digital spaces, which then absolutely translates into some of the illegal encampment movements and demonstrations. And of course, Avi mentioned in his opening remarks, we are now seeing the second case of revenge rape for Palestine, which is mimicking the attacks of October 7th. Meanwhile, the social media platforms, even though CyberWell has been lobbying them to come out and prohibit October 7th denial, are hesitating to do that when 39% of October 7th denial content online is actually rape and sexual violence denial. So it's also normalizing rape culture everywhere, specifically for Jewish women and Jewish communities.
Well, this is we've seen full denialism, but also partial denialism, and this is a sort of partial denialism, but that's been an anti-Israel kind of narrative feeding the anti-Semitism discourse. Thank you, Tal-Or. Stav, let me focus here on one issue. In the fighting anti-Semitism ecosystem, we differ between the generators of anti-Semitism and their followers. So that's not the same. The followers are usually less informed about the issues. How do we fight this ignorance that has been catalyzing anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism? We've also seen a trend of denialism, as Tal-Or said, of October 7th. Is it possible to counter this wave?
We hope so. I mean, when we search who will be our target users, we decided to go on the followers because we believe that it will be much harder to change the mindset of those convinced already. And we believe that if you ignore or lack of knowledge, it will be much easier to change your mind. And that therefore, what we are doing is focusing on critical thinking and challenging the generators' sentiment, like with actual question like, oh, but we think that we saw something else, or did you check that, or go to that video, we think it says otherwise. Like we are not focusing on you are anti-Semitism or this is not true, but we think you want to see that. We think you need to follow that. So this is, I think, like what we believe in trying to do and focus.
And let me just follow up with one more question. So how do you counter the narratives that are justifying the massacre, the narratives that promote disinformation about events related to the work, like the case of the El Ahli hospital, which came out then, as different than it started in the beginning. How do we counter those narratives?
It was hard because it was a very fast trend of putting out there the misinformation and the fake news, and then we had a lot of work of finding the facts, because we want only to give something which is factual, which no one can have a doubt on, and it's very difficult when you deal with someone that sees the truth differently. You need to do hard work, like to find the right facts and the right thing that will convince. Yeah.
Thank you, Stav. I bet this is a difficult goal in a world where truth has less of a value. It's probably not easy. Maya, you represent kind of the bad cop here, right? So let's go back to the generators of hate, anti-Semitism, and harassment online. In recent years, we've heard terrifying stories about malicious state actors online. They can engage in whole of society efforts and activities like elections, but we also saw that they can get to private users. And let me just mention the case, the horrifying case of the family of hostage Liry Albag, who received mourner's wreath, and according to the Shin Bet, Iran was behind it. So what are you seeing, and what are the risks for us as individuals, as communities, but also as states, because it gets to the state level?
Oh, that's a good question. And also a big one. So where do I start? We know that countries maintain cyber forces. You have the US, Israel, Iran, North Korea, China as well. Even the Syrian government has the Syrian Electronic Army. And typically when we have nation-state actors that maintain these cyber forces, they'll go after another country's critical infrastructure. So on October 7th, for example, we had cyber attacks against our siren alert systems. So causing potential harm to a civilian population by attacking our siren, our rocket barrage alert system. That also can happen. Now, when it comes to really, I'm trying to find the right phrasing in order to say this. We also saw on October 7th is nation-state actors and organized groups capitalizing and weaponizing social media algorithms so that they can control the narrative. They hijack the feedback loop behind real-world events in order to control the narrative. So as soon as October 7th happened, and I mean 30 seconds to a minute after that attack happened in the morning, we started to see traffic on social media directing how viral that content was going to take, and it was anti-Israel. It wasn't, hey, this attack is happening. It's showing it from a very specific lens. And in addition, you've got bots that are behind that, basically making that content go viral and creating that kind of inauthentic feel. So that can be targeted against an individual, a community of people, a country, or really control the entire conflict in the way the world sees it.
Please.
I just want to add that I absolutely agree with what Maya has to say. I think that for people in the space who are looking at what happened online, and I was actually in Los Angeles on October 6th in the middle of the night when I started getting calls and saw literally everything in that infamous video that the Israeli government is having screenings of on Twitter, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. I don't have to see the video because I saw it in real time on social media. What were they doing? They were hijacking the social media platforms. It was the largest hijacking of mainstream social media platforms by a terrorist organization, which perpetuated the attack far beyond the point of what was happening in time and space. And we already saw in the weekend after October 7th that there were slaughters of Christians in Sudan that all of a sudden were being live streamed directly onto Facebook. Why? Because other terror organizations also learned from Hamas's hijacking of these mainstream social media platforms. It should be a wake-up call to all Western democracies that are under the threat of a terrorist attack that this is a new tool in their arsenal.
Yeah, thank you, Tal-Or. And that reminds me of a solution that I heard a couple of years ago that was never implemented for some reason, but seems to me like something that makes a lot of sense for the companies to kind of a pause before people can post. I mean, have them monitor the content before it's posted, because the harm is just unimaginable and unstoppable the moment it's online. So thank you for that. Just one question about IA for all of you. So we've seen the AI, sorry, not IA. I work in an IA department, the International Affairs Department, and we are always, all of us get confused with AI, IA. So we've all seen the AI-generated pictures from Gaza, All Eyes on Rafah, and some recent campaigns. And we've also seen users responding to those campaigns saying, this is AI-generated, now let's show them the real world, right? So Maya, Tal-Or, what are the risks specifically of AI? Let's just put a point here of what's the main challenge that we're having?
My biggest main turn this off. You guys hear me? All right. My biggest main challenge is, I mean, especially coming from the financial services industry, is that AI is supercharging their ability to basically pull kind of like a smoke and mirrors effect on the world. It's supercharging fraud. It's making us rethink about what it means to be authentic. What is an actual viral post? What were the users behind it? What are people seeing? Is it AI generated? Is it a real image? Is it of this conflict? And we really don't have a method for resolving it yet. All of the legislation regarding to AI is way behind where the actual threats lie. And we haven't closed that gap yet. And we'll see how it goes. It's really kind of up in the air because nobody's holding AI platforms accountable. They can monetize, all of these users going in and using their services, but there's no regulation, there's no enforcement coming after them. The only enforcement that I've really seen is within the deepfake space regarding celebrities, or when I think it was back in December where somebody deepfaked voice of Biden and they went around and called in a particular state. And nothing else in terms of conflict dynamics, anti-Semitism, anything like that.
Hello.
Just to add that,
Stav, I have a positive question for you.
I know. I just want to mention something that, on the other hand, we can be positive and think that as long as the AI will progress, and it is on a massive way, and so you as tracking financials will have the ability to see that, because it also will become more expensive. Like when it actually has an influence, like bots on social media, bots, that are on a massive scale, it means that there is money behind that.
And we can use AI for good, right?
I want to quote Connor Leahy, who said that AI is philosophy on a deadline. For Jews in Israel, the deadline is shorter, and in fact, it may even be today, right? When it comes to anti-Semitism and the level of anti-Israel vitriol that we're experiencing. Actually, October 7th and everything that happened post-October 7th is a big use case for AI and AI accountability. The risks of AI, which Maya highlighted, and I think so did Avi and you in your opening remarks, is that there's already a risk without AI even being used, was that it's become the boogeyman of distrust. And even in this conflict, when Al Jazeera tweeted out that the image of the incinerated infants that Israel released was an AI-generated image, that was very much a casting of doubt on any information coming out about the conflict from the state of Israel, and we've seen that boogeyman concept perpetuated just to have mistrust. I think the other real risks of AI that we already saw playing out is obviously the ease with which to produce visual content, which it's important to understand psychologically that content is much more convincing than written content because it shuts off critical thinking, which is exactly what Stav is focusing on. And I think we haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to anti-Semitism, because we all know that anti-Semitism is a conspiracy theory. And AI, when we talk about using AI in the celebrity space or the Hollywood space, can make really riveting stories. So we have a risk here that the worst anti-Semitic conspiracy theories can be updated to be far more convincing, far more sensational, and far more believable.
Which is the real threat, given a lot of research that has been done about the lowering of critical thinking, especially among the younger generation. So very scary. So I have a lot more questions, but I'm going to keep my promise to be on time. And just one more question to the three of you. So I have to say that from my own experience, there was no one day since October 7th that I didn't receive a proposal, an initiative about fighting online anti-Semitism, or it's anti-Jewish, or Hasbara initiatives, and so on. So how do you all see the field collaborating? And I know it's challenging for NGOs and companies, but how do we pull all the resources in an effective way? How do we all come together to challenge this threat that is really against us as a state, but also as a community, as a Jewish community in the world? And how do we make sure that we don't duplicate efforts?
I've seen a unique type of initiative also from the philanthropic space, but I think not enough from the private sector space, which is that if we're all aware that there's such a lot of duplicitous efforts and wonderful initiative and energies, there isn't an optimization platform for kind of task assignment. So optimizing the resources that already exist in the private sector, in the philanthropic sector, and also the civil society that actually needs here in Israel. And I actually believe that I don't see enough engagement from private sectors that are connected to CRM or task management, because that type of optimization is what we need. And guess what? The other side already has an app, and we don't, which is ridiculous, because we're the app nation.
Yeah. Stav.
I totally agree with Tal-Or, and also will add about the public, not only the private sector, which obviously needs to get into to the picture. But as well said in the beginning of the conference, we have to be on this together. I think that we need to put ego in the side. Like, we met a lot of partners and initiative as individual, because we are not a company yet, who try to do things like us or want to do, and whoever came, we said yes, like, let's do something. We even try to cooperate with Tal-Or's organization, because they are doing something much better than we can do on a certain angle. And I think the cooperation and the will, this is what will bring us to that.
You know, I can't say that my answer is very different, because I think they've covered all of the collaborative efforts, but it's exactly what Tal-Or said in terms of having focus. You know, these wonderful ladies are the masters of their domain, and they know their space. I know my space as well, and we have several partners that know theirs, and it's the ability to bring all of that knowledge, all of that access to data, and also leveraging those partnerships abroad, credit card companies, social media platforms, and so on, and getting everybody in the same page and getting them focused. And I think the angle that your company really goes from is from making them compliant. You are legally obligated. You cannot operate in this space unless you become compliant in this way. And how else can we do it is from basically a multi-pronged attack of social media, of finance, of law, of all of these different areas. We just need that platform, that parent in the room saying, hey guys, everybody, we're gonna gather here, and this is what we're gonna work on.
So an umbrella initiative. All right. Mm-hmm. Stav, Maya, Tal-Or, I could have stayed here for hours just talking to you. It's so interesting, and I want to urge all of you to go online and visit those websites and initiatives, because that makes us all a community that fights anti-Semitism together. We need each other in that fight, so thank you all so much for being here this evening, and I guess I'm passing it on to Michal, I guess. Thank you.